I was sitting in my office staring at the ivory wedding invitation with gold lettering that read, "Rachel and David request your presence." The irony was not lost on me. My little sister was getting the fairy tale wedding she had always dreamed of, complete with the most expensive venue in town, while I remained the family afterthought. What they did not know was that every single detail of this perfect day was being funded by the daughter they consistently treated as second best. In just 2 weeks, they would discover exactly who had been their anonymous benefactor all along. Before I dive into this story, let me know in the comments where you are watching from. And do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama. Trust me, you will not believe what my family was about to discover about their least favorite daughter. The difference between Rachel and me had been crystal clear since childhood. At 28, I had learned to accept that my mother, Patricia, would always see 25-year-old Rachel as the golden child. Birthday parties were elaborate affairs for Rachel, complete with themed decorations and expensive gifts, while mine consisted of a grocery store cake and whatever was on sale at the department store. When college time came, Rachel received a full ride, courtesy of our parents, while I worked 3 jobs to pay my way through business school. The pattern was so consistent that I stopped expecting anything different. Despite the constant favoritism, I threw myself into building something meaningful. Real estate became my passion and my escape. By the time I turned 24, I had purchased my first rental property. By 26, I owned 3 properties throughout the city. The crown jewel of my portfolio was Grandview Manor, a stunning Victorian estate that had been converted into the most sought-after wedding venue in our area. The previous owner was elderly and needed to sell quickly, so I managed to purchase it for a fraction of its worth. Most people in town had no idea that the successful young businesswoman who owned half the prime real estate was Patricia's supposedly unsuccessful daughter. I kept my financial success carefully hidden from my family. Living in a modest apartment and driving a reliable but unremarkable car, I made sure they never suspected the truth about my income. The reasoning was simple. I wanted them to love me for who I was, not what I could provide. There was also the practical consideration that revealing my wealth would likely result in constant requests for money and investment opportunities that would benefit Rachel more than anyone else. When Rachel came to me 3 months before her wedding, tears streaming down her face as she explained their financial struggles, my heart broke for her. She and David had been planning their dream wedding for over a year, but reality had hit hard when they started receiving quotes. Grandview Manor alone cost $15,000 for a single-day rental. The honeymoon they wanted in Hawaii would cost $8,000. Between the dress flowers, photography, and catering, they were looking at $35,000 total. Their combined savings account held less than $10,000. I made a decision that night that would change everything. Operating through my business contacts, I arranged for an anonymous benefactor to cover all wedding expenses. I transferred $50,000 into a separate account and worked with wedding planners to make sure every detail Rachel wanted became reality. The cover story was simple. A wealthy local business person who preferred to remain anonymous wanted to sponsor beautiful love stories. Rachel and David were told they had been selected from several deserving couples. The joy on my sister's face when she received that news made every penny worth it. For the first time in months, I felt like maybe this wedding could bring our family closer together. 3 months before the wedding, the comments started. At first, they seemed like innocent suggestions, disguised as concern. Patricia would mention, during our weekly family dinners, that I really should consider losing some weight before the wedding photos. Rachel would chime in with suggestions about updating my hairstyle or maybe investing in some new clothes. When Rachel selected her bridesmaids, she chose college friends and sorority sisters, carefully avoiding any mention of including her own sister in the wedding party. The message was subtle but clear. I was family, but I was not the kind of family you showcase. The signs became impossible to ignore during wedding planning meetings. I had volunteered to help with various tasks, hoping to feel included in the process. Instead, I found myself relegated to the most mundane responsibilities, while Rachel's friends handled anything visible or important. When suggestions were made during planning sessions, Patricia would listen carefully to everyone else's input while dismissing mine with comments like, "That is an interesting idea, honey, but I think we should go with something more traditional." Behind the scenes, I was secretly coordinating with vendors, ensuring every detail met Rachel's exact specifications. I spent hours on the phone with the caterer, adjusting menu selections based on conversations I overheard at family dinners. I worked with the florist to create arrangements that matched photos Rachel had shown me months earlier. The photographer received detailed notes about family dynamics and which angles would create the most flattering shots. Every element of this wedding was being orchestrated by someone the family considered unworthy of being in the actual photos. The dress shopping expedition 2 months before the wedding became a nightmare I should have seen coming. Patricia organized a special day for close family and friends to help Rachel find the perfect gown. The invitation list included our aunt, Susan, Rachel's college roommate, and her future mother-in-law. I was included, but it quickly became apparent that my presence was more obligation than desire. At the bridal boutique, Patricia positioned herself as the expert consultant, directing Rachel through various styles while offering commentary on each option. When I attempted to join the conversation, Patricia would redirect attention elsewhere or suggest I go find refreshments for everyone. During the actual dress fitting, Patricia made several pointed comments about making sure all the wedding photos would be perfect. She mentioned specific concerns about lighting angles and background elements that might distract from the bride's natural beauty. The bridesmaid dress situation revealed the true extent of my exclusion. Although I was not officially in the wedding party, the shop assistant suggested I try on a dress in the wedding colors, thinking it might be nice for family photos. As I emerged from the fitting room, Patricia's expression shifted to barely concealed distaste. She announced that the color really did not work with my complexion and that we should probably focus on finding something more suitable for me to wear while staying appropriately in the background. The other women in our group exchanged uncomfortable glances, but no one challenged Patricia's assessment. 2 weeks later, during a family dinner at Patricia's house, I finally understood exactly how they viewed my role in this wedding. The conversation centered around seating arrangements and photo logistics. Patricia and Rachel discussed the importance of keeping certain elements properly positioned to ensure the best possible outcome for professional pictures and social media posts. They talked about managing the guest list carefully and making sure nothing would detract from the overall aesthetic they were trying to achieve. When I directly asked about my specific responsibilities during the wedding ceremony and reception, Patricia deflected with vague assurances that of course I was important to the family. However, no concrete role was assigned and no specific tasks were outlined. The more questions I asked, the more obvious it became that they had carefully planned this entire event around minimizing my visibility. Rachel's response was particularly painful. She insisted that she wanted this wedding to be absolutely perfect and that everyone needed to understand how important this day was to her future happiness. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning, exactly 2 weeks before the wedding. I was at Grandview Manor conducting a final walkthrough with Marcus, the venue manager, to ensure every detail would be perfect for Rachel's special day. We were reviewing the timeline for setup when my phone rang, displaying my mother's number. Patricia's voice was cold and decisive, lacking any of the warmth typically associated with family conversations. She did not waste time with pleasantries or explanations. "Do not even think about showing up to the wedding, Erica," she stated firmly. "You will ruin the photos. Rachel deserves better in her background." The words hit me like physical blows, each syllable confirming my worst fears about how my family truly viewed me. She continued with brutal efficiency, explaining that they had discussed this decision extensively, and concluded that my presence would negatively impact the overall quality of the wedding photos. According to Patricia, I was not photogenic enough to be included in professional pictures that would be displayed in their home and shared on social media for years to come. She mentioned concerns about my weight, my style choices, and what she termed my general lack of understanding about appropriate wedding aesthetics. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering onto the marble floor of the venue's main hall. Marcus, who had been pretending not to listen while organizing floral delivery schedules, immediately approached with professional concern. 28 years of accumulated hurt crashed over me in that moment. Every childhood disappointment, every overlooked achievement, every time I had been made to feel less than worthy, culminated in this single devastating conversation. The realization that I would never be truly accepted by these people, regardless of what I accomplished or how much I gave, was overwhelming. Marcus helped me to a chair and offered water while I attempted to process what had just happened. This man, who barely knew me beyond our professional relationship, showed more kindness in that moment than my own mother had demonstrated in years. He quietly mentioned that in his experience, families sometimes said things they did not mean during stressful wedding planning periods. But his tone suggested he understood this situation was different. I called Rachel immediately, hoping desperately that she would contradict our mother's decision and insist that I belonged at her wedding. Instead, Rachel's response shattered what remained of my illusions about our relationship. "I am sorry, but Mom is right," she said quietly. "This is my day, and I need everything to be perfect. You understand, right? Maybe we can have lunch after the honeymoon and catch up then." Rachel went on to explain that she and David were concerned about the image they wanted to project to his family and their future social circles. The wedding photos would be displayed prominently in their home and shared extensively on social media platforms. She had specific visions of how she wanted to be remembered on this day, and unfortunately, my presence would conflict with those goals. She assured me that this decision was not personal, but rather a practical consideration based on the overall aesthetic they were trying to achieve. The conversation continued for several more painful minutes. Rachel described the extensive planning that had gone into every visual element of this wedding, from color coordination to carefully curated guest lists designed to create the perfect backdrop for professional photography. She mentioned consultations with wedding photographers about optimal positioning and lighting considerations. Every word reinforced the message that I was fundamentally incompatible with their vision of perfection. After ending the call with Rachel, I sat alone in the grand ballroom of Grandview Manor, surrounded by the elegant details that would showcase my sister's happiness while excluding me entirely. The irony of the situation was almost overwhelming. I was literally sitting in a venue that I owned, planning final details for an event I had secretly funded after being told I was not worthy of attending. Marcus approached cautiously and asked if I needed anything. In that moment, something fundamental shifted in my perspective. I realized that I had been enabling this treatment for years by continuing to give without expecting basic respect in return. The decision to change course was surprisingly clear and immediate. I spent the next several hours reviewing all the contracts and financial arrangements I had made for this wedding. Every vendor agreement, every payment, and every booking could be traced directly back to my business accounts and personal credit cards. The venue rental contract was signed under my company name. The catering deposit had been paid from my business account. Even the flowers had been ordered using my preferred vendor relationships. I called my attorney friend Jordan to confirm my legal position. According to Jordan, I had absolutely no obligation to continue funding an event where I was explicitly not welcome. All contracts had been properly executed and could be terminated with appropriate notice. The anonymous benefactor arrangement had been structured specifically to give me complete control over all financial commitments. I started with the money. Sitting in my home office that evening, I accessed my business banking account and initiated a transfer of $50,000 back to my primary checking account. The transaction processed immediately, leaving a clear digital trail with timestamps and confirmation numbers. I took a screenshot of the completed transfer and composed a simple text message to both Patricia and Rachel. Thanks for the clarity about my place in this family. The response was immediate and frantic. Patricia called within minutes, her voice shaking as she demanded explanations. What do you mean? Where did this money come from? What are you talking about? Rachel's call came seconds later, sobbing hysterically as she begged me to explain what was happening. Both calls revealed the same shocking realization. They had never questioned the source of their anonymous benefactor's generosity, and discovering that I had been funding their dream wedding was completely unexpected. I remained calm during both conversations, explaining simply that they had made their position clear regarding my value to the family. Since I was not welcome at the wedding, it seemed appropriate to adjust my financial commitments accordingly. When Patricia demanded that I reverse the transfer immediately, I reminded her that she had specifically told me not to attend because my presence would ruin Rachel's special day. I was simply respecting her wishes by removing myself entirely from the situation. The second phase of my plan unfolded the following morning. I contacted Marcus at Grandview Manor and formally canceled the venue booking effective immediately. As the property owner, I had complete authority to terminate any rental agreement with appropriate notice. Marcus handled the situation with professional discretion, though I could tell he was impressed by the revelation that I owned the property. Within hours, Rachel's wedding planner called Patricia in a panic. The venue had been canceled by the owner, and no alternative locations were available on such short notice. When Patricia demanded to speak with someone in charge at Grandview Manor, Marcus professionally explained that the property owner had terminated the contract. The owner? Patricia asked incredulously. That would be Ms. Erica Thompson, Marcus replied calmly. The phone calls that followed were unlike anything I had ever experienced. Patricia was completely shocked to discover that her supposedly unsuccessful daughter owned the most prestigious wedding venue in the city. Rachel was devastated that her dream location was no longer available. Extended family members started asking questions about what had happened and why the wedding plans were suddenly falling apart. The domino effect continued throughout the week. The catering company called to confirm details and discovered their deposit had been refunded. The photographer found that their contract had been canceled and their retainer returned. The florist received similar news about their arrangements. Within 5 days, every aspect of Rachel's carefully planned wedding had been dismantled. Family members attempted various strategies to convince me to restore their plans. Patricia tried guilt, reminding me of family obligations and the importance of supporting my sister's happiness. Rachel tried emotional manipulation, crying about her ruined dreams and destroyed relationships with David's family. Aunts and cousins called to express their confusion about the situation and encourage me to reconsider my decision. I remained firm in my position throughout all these conversations. When people asked for explanations, I simply shared the exact words Patricia had used when disinviting me from the wedding. Most family members were shocked to learn that I had been excluded from my own sister's wedding because I might ruin the photos. Several relatives expressed disbelief that Patricia would actually say such things to her own daughter. Rachel and David eventually married in a small courthouse ceremony with immediate family only. The guest list was limited to fewer than 20 people, and professional photography consisted of a few snapshots taken on cell phones. The honeymoon in Hawaii was replaced with a weekend trip to a nearby city. The elaborate reception with dancing and catering became dinner at a chain restaurant. The aftermath of these events forced our family to confront years of accumulated dysfunction. Patricia was compelled to acknowledge her pattern of favoritism and the impact it had on our relationship. Several relatives who learned the full story expressed their disappointment with how I had been treated. Rachel faced questions from friends and extended family about why her sister was not included in her wedding celebration. I used this period to focus on building relationships with people who valued me for who I truly was. My business continued to thrive, and I found satisfaction in helping other couples create beautiful wedding memories at Grandview Manor. The venue hosted elegant celebrations almost every weekend, filled with families who understood that love and inclusion were the most important elements of any ceremony. Therapy helped me process the childhood experiences that had shaped my need for family approval. I learned to recognize the difference between healthy family dynamics and toxic patterns that I had normalized over many years. Working with a counselor, I developed strategies for maintaining appropriate boundaries while still remaining open to genuine relationship changes. The most profound realization came gradually over several months. I understood that spending decades trying to earn love from people who were fundamentally unwilling to give it had prevented me from recognizing the authentic relationships already present in my life. Friends like Marcus colleagues in my business network, and even my attorney Jordan, had shown me more consistent kindness and respect than my own family. 3 years have passed since Rachel's wedding disaster. I still own Grandview Manor, and it continues to be one of the most successful wedding venues in our region. Every weekend, I watch couples celebrate their love, surrounded by families who genuinely cherish them. The contrast with my own experience is stark, but no longer painful. My relationship with Patricia and Rachel remains complicated. We exchange pleasantries during holiday gatherings, but the deeper connection I once craved no longer feels necessary. I have learned that family relationships, like any others, must be based on mutual respect and genuine affection. When those elements are absent, even blood relations become merely social obligations. The most important lesson from this experience is understanding that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is showing them the consequences of their choices. For too many years, I had protected my family from experiencing the results of their treatment toward me. By continuing to give unconditionally while receiving conditional acceptance, I had enabled patterns that were harmful to everyone involved. I have built a life filled with people who appreciate my contributions and celebrate my successes. My business relationships are based on professional respect and mutual benefit. My friendships are founded on shared interests and genuine care for one another's well-being. These connections provide the emotional support and validation that I spent years unsuccessfully seeking from my family of origin. That was 3 years ago. I still own Grandview Manor, and it hosts beautiful weddings every weekend for couples who value love over appearances. Sometimes I wonder if my family learned anything that day, but I know I certainly did. The most valuable discovery was realizing that I deserved relationships built on genuine appreciation rather than settling for whatever crumbs of affection people were willing to offer. When you stop accepting less than you deserve, You create space for relationships that actually fulfill you. Family is not about blood connections or shared history. True family consists of people who support your happiness, celebrate your achievements, and make you feel valued for exactly who you are. I hope this story resonates with anyone who has ever felt undervalued by people who should cherish them most. Let me know in the comments if you have experienced similar family dynamics and how you handled those situations. Do not forget to like this video if it helped you think about your own relationships differently, and subscribe for more real-life stories about finding strength in difficult circumstances. Share this with someone who might need to hear that they deserve better treatment from the people in their lives. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is teach people that their actions have consequences. I wish you all the courage to demand the respect you deserve and the wisdom to recognize the relationships truly worth your investment.